The vast Galactic Council chamber fell silent. 700 alien species from across the Milky Way, represented by their finest diplomats, stared in disbelief at the lone human standing at the center of the speaking platform. Ambassador Eleanor Reeves, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, looked almost fragile beneath the towering crystalline dome that had witnessed 10,000 years of peaceful galactic governance. The chamber itself was designed to intimidate. Massive curved walls rose hundreds of meters high, covered with glowing symbols from civilizations older than human writing. Hovering platforms arranged in tiered rings contained delegations from worlds humans had only recently learned existed. Light from 3 artificial suns streamed through the transparent ceiling, illuminating a space larger than Earth's largest stadium. "Humanity rejects your ultimatum," Eleanor stated, her voice unnervingly calm despite being amplified throughout the immense space. "We will not surrender the Sol System's outer resource belt, nor will we dismantle our defensive network as demanded." The presider, a massive gas phase entity contained within an ornate hovering vessel, pulsed with visible agitation. Swirls of luminescent purple and red energy patterns rippled across its semi-transparent form. "Ambassador Reeves, perhaps you misunderstand." The presider's translated voice boomed. "This is not a request. The Council has voted. Earth has been found in violation of Resource Allocation Statute 774B. Compliance is mandatory." Around the chamber, representatives of the founding species nodded in agreement. The Xerelians, insectoid beings draped in ceremonial silks, clicked their mandibles in approval. The crystalline Modari representatives refracted light in patterns signifying concurrence. The ancient Vossians, who resembled massive amphibians, rumbled deep tones of affirmation. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Behind her stood 3 humanoids, each carrying simple diplomatic cases. With a subtle nod from Eleanor, they simultaneously opened the cases and activated what appeared to be ordinary data tablets. "No, Presider Volmar, it is the Council that misunderstands." Her voice echoed through the chamber. "For 80 years, humanity has endured your economic restrictions. For 80 years, we've watched our colony stripped of mining rights while Council-favored species expanded unchecked. We've documented every violation, every instance where Council law was selectively enforced against us." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Xerelian representative, Ambassador Crix, rose from his delegation's platform. His forearms moved in patterns denoting diplomatic outrage. "Human, your species was welcome despite lacking proper development time. You were granted technology, protection, access to the galactic community. And you repay this generosity with threats?" Eleanor smiled thinly. "Not threats, Ambassador Crix, declarations." The tablets in her aide's hands projected a massive holographic display that engulfed the center of the chamber. It showed a 3-dimensional map of Council space with critical systems illuminated in red. Space stations, wormhole junctions, communication arrays, and resource processing facilities, all highlighted across thousands of light years. "What you're seeing is a real-time feed of human assets now in position throughout Council space," Eleanor explained, her voice remaining steady. "Stealth platforms, autonomous weapon systems, and specialized disruptors targeted at key infrastructural nodes. Systems we've quietly developed and deployed while you believed us technologically inferior." The presider's containment vessel darkened with alarm. "This is impossible. Our detection grids would have what?" Eleanor interrupted. "Would have detected technology developed outside of your approved pathways. Would have recognized patterns your species have never conceived of. While you restricted our visible research, we turned to paths you never bothered to explore." She stepped forward, her simple blue diplomatic uniform catching the light. "Humanity hereby declares a state of war against the Galactic Council. Not against its member species, but against the corrupt institution itself. You have 30 standard cycles to dissolve the current Council structure and agree to our terms for reorganization." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species began shouting, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Security drones deployed from hidden compartments in the ceiling, only to suddenly freeze in midair and drop, disabled by unseen forces. A massive Vossian representative rose to his full 4-meter height. "You dare threaten this assembly? The combined fleets of even the minor Council races could reduce your homeworld to ash." Eleanor remained unmoved. "You misunderstand, Representative Dorn. This isn't a military conflict in the traditional sense. We have no intention of engaging your fleets directly. As if on cue, the chamber's lights flickered. The massive view screens that lined the walls suddenly displayed the same message in hundreds of different languages. Phase 1 initiated. What is happening? Demanded the presider, his vessel moving erratically. A demonstration, replied Eleanor. At this moment, the Council's primary financial exchange has been temporarily suspended. Nothing destroyed, simply paused. All transactions frozen. We've also disabled the automated defense systems throughout this facility. She gestured upward, where the security drones remained inert on the floor. If we wished you harm, this meeting would have ended very differently. Ambassador Crix chittered nervously. What do you want, human? Reform, Eleanor replied simply. Equal standing for all species. Transparent governance. An end to the economic suppression of younger civilizations. The details are in the document being transmitted to all of you now. Every representative's personal device chimed simultaneously as they received the human proposal. This isn't a negotiation. It's a courtesy notice, Eleanor continued. The war has already begun. Not with weapons that destroy, but with systems that simply correct imbalances of power. The presider's vessel moved forward. And if we refuse these demands? Eleanor's expression remained calm. Then over the next 30 cycles, your carefully controlled galactic economy will experience cascading system failures. Your tiered access to crucial resources will collapse. The privileged position of founding species will become meaningless as all worlds gain equal access to technologies you've hoarded for centuries. She turned, signaling her aides to close their cases. We'll speak again in 30 cycles, or sooner if the Council wishes to discuss the terms of its restructuring. As Eleanor walked toward the exit, the massive doors opened before her without command. The Council's own security system seemed to recognize her authority. Ambassador Reeves spoke one final time before leaving, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. Humanity came to you seeking peaceful cooperation. You offered us controlled subservience instead. Now we offer you a choice: evolve or become irrelevant. The doors sealed behind the human delegation, leaving 700 of the galaxy's most powerful beings staring at each other in shocked silence, realizing that the quiet, seemingly compliant species from the spiral arm had just changed everything. 3 days after Ambassador Reeves's declaration, the Galactic Council's emergency session convened in their secondary chamber on Proxima Station. The primary council headquarters on Centauri Prime had been evacuated following unexplained system failures throughout the massive structure. Environmental controls had malfunctioned, gravity fields destabilized, and security systems had begun targeting Council security personnel instead of protecting them. The secondary chamber lacked the grandeur of the main council hall. It was a utilitarian space, designed for crisis management rather than ceremonial proceedings. The floating platforms were replaced with simple tiered seating, and the ornate translator systems gave way to basic communication devices. Admiral Jorux of the Council Defense Force stood before the hastily assembled representatives. His reptilian scales gleamed under the harsh lighting, the ceremonial battle markings on his crest indicating his high rank. Despite his imposing physical presence, a nervous twitch in his primary membrane betrayed his anxiety. The human threat is substantial but not insurmountable, he assured them, projecting confidence despite his visible stress. We've mobilized the 7th and 9th fleets to secure critical junction points. The humans possess only 43 registered warships. They cannot possibly, a junior communications officer interrupted, rushing to the Admiral's side with a data tablet. The young Tellurian's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress as he whispered something to Jorux. After a brief exchange, Jorx's scales paled visibly from deep green to a sickly yellow. It appears, he said slowly, mandibles clicking in distress, that we have lost contact with both fleets. The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. Over 2,000 warships vanished. Director Lana Voss of Council Intelligence rose from her seat. A diminutive being with translucent skin revealing complex neural pathways pulsing with bioluminescent energy, she approached the central platform. Her species, the Navali, were known for their analytical minds and unmatched information processing abilities. The humans did not engage our fleets conventionally, she explained, her voice artificially modulated to carry through the chamber, Our preliminary analysis suggests they deployed what they call cognitive disruptors, devices that induce temporary but complete confusion in organic neural systems. Our crews are likely alive but incapacitated. Representative Olo of the Mercantile Alliance slammed a tentacle against his console. The massive cephalopod-like being's skin flushed dark purple with anger. Impossible. Such technology would violate the Neural Sovereignty Accords, he bellowed. Accords the humans never signed, replied Voss calmly. They only agreed to the weapons limitation treaties. They found the loophole none of us anticipated. The main view screen at the chamber's center activated without command. Ambassador Reeves appeared, now dressed in what seemed to be a military uniform, though without any recognizable insignia. Her backdrop was not a human military vessel as expected, but what appeared to be a garden, lush with plant life from dozens of worlds, suggesting she was transmitting from a multi-species habitat. I see you've discovered one of our specialized approaches, she said pleasantly. Your fleets will recover in approximately 40 hours. No permanent damage done this time. The Presider's vessel hovered forward, energy patterns swirling in agitation. What do you want, human? What could possibly justify this madness? Justice, Presider Volmar. And reform. Eleanor's expression hardened. For generations, the Council has operated as a self-serving oligarchy under the guise of democratic governance. Core species hoard resources while relegating newcomers to economic vassalage, she gestured, and the screen split to show footage of various planets, some lush and developed, others clearly struggling with minimal infrastructure despite abundant natural resources. These are human-allied worlds versus Council-favored worlds with identical resource profiles. The disparity speaks for itself. The images were stark. On one side, a mineral-rich world with primitive extraction facilities populated by a species only recently admitted to the Council. On the other, a similar planet controlled by a founding species, with advanced automated mining systems and orbital processing facilities. Director Voss stepped forward. Ambassador, surely there are diplomatic channels? We tried those for 80 years, Eleanor interrupted. Every petition dismissed. Every formal complaint buried in subcommittees. Every appeal rejected on technicalities. Now we're trying something new. Her eyes narrowed. In 12 hours, we will disable the Council's primary communication network. This isn't destruction. It's controlled dismantling of a corrupt system. A Zerelian representative chittered angrily. You would plunge the galaxy into chaos? Billions depend on those networks. Incorrect, Eleanor replied calmly. We've already established backup systems that will maintain essential civilian services. Only the Council's privileged command channels will be affected. She paused, letting the implication sink in. Somehow humans had built a shadow infrastructure throughout Council space, right under their noses. How is this possible? Demanded Admiral Jorux, his military mind struggling to comprehend the strategic failure. Our surveillance networks were designed to detect threats, you understood, Eleanor completed his thought. While you watched for ships and weapons, we built networks. While you monitored manufacturing centers, we created distributed systems. You were looking for centralized power, we created something diffuse. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, a data packet arrived on every representative's personal device simultaneously, bypassing all security protocols. Each received different information, specifically tailored to their species and position. Trade representatives saw evidence of Council corruption in resource allocation. Military leaders received data on how intelligence about emerging threats had been suppressed to maintain political balances. Scientific delegations found proof of technology suppression to maintain economic hierarchies. The message accompanying each information packet read simply, Phase 2 begins. Choose which side of history you'll stand on. Admiral Joruk stared at his data display in growing horror. It contained fleet deployment orders he had never seen. Orders using his authentication codes to position Council defensive assets away from wealthy core worlds, leaving developing planets vulnerable to resource raiders. Orders he had supposedly issued but had never seen. This is fabricated, he whispered, but the verification codes were perfect. Either the humans had achieved impossible levels of data manipulation, or the corruption went deeper than anyone had suspected. Across the chamber, similar scenes played out as hundreds of representatives confronted uncomfortable truths about the institution they served. Director Voss scanned her own data packet. Internal. Council intelligence directives to monitor and, if necessary, eliminate representatives who advocated too strongly for reforms. Her name appeared on the surveillance list despite her high position. "We need to verify this information," she announced, her voice less steady than before. "The humans could be manipulating us." Ambassador Reeves reappeared on the main screen as if anticipating the accusation. "Every document includes authentication markers and access pathways," she explained. "Verify them yourselves, through secure channels not controlled by Council leadership. You'll find everything is genuine." Her expression softened slightly. "Many of you entered Council service with noble intentions. You wanted to build something better. We're offering you the chance to fulfill that original mission." The screen changed to show a new document, a proposed charter for a reformed galactic governance structure, one with equal representation, transparent operations, and checks against centralized power. "You have 18 hours before Phase 3 begins," Eleanor said. "Unlike the previous phases, that one cannot be easily reversed. Choose wisely." As the transmission ended, the chamber remained silent. The representatives looked at each other with new suspicion and uncertainty. The mighty Galactic Council, unchallenged for millennia, now faced an enemy who sought not to destroy them but to transform them. An enemy who wielded truth as a weapon more devastating than any fleet. Admiral Jorux closed his data display and looked around the chamber. "I think," he said slowly, "we should read this proposed charter very carefully." The Central Intelligence Directorate of the Galactic Council buzzed with frantic activity. 1 week into what was now being called the Human Ultimatum, key Council systems continued to fail in precisely targeted patterns. Communication hubs disabled, military response coordination crippled, yet civilian infrastructure remained largely untouched. The CID headquarters occupied an entire asteroid that had been hollowed out and reinforced with the most advanced security systems in known space. Quantum-locked doors separated each section, and neural scanners verified the identity of everyone moving between areas. Despite these precautions, the humans had somehow transmitted their messages directly to specific workstations throughout the facility. Director Voss huddled with her senior analysts in a secure room, one supposedly shielded from all surveillance. The walls were embedded with signal dampeners, thought pattern scramblers, and anti-monitoring technology from 17 different species. If anywhere in Council space could be considered truly secure, this was it. The doors slid open unexpectedly, causing every analyst to reach for emergency protocols. A tall, angular being with obsidian skin, etched with luminescent blue patterns, entered. Ambassador Threll of the Modar Consensus, a species known for its neutrality in Council affairs. "Director, we need to speak privately," Threll said, voice resonating at a frequency that disrupted automated recording systems. Voss dismissed her team with a gesture. When they were alone, Threll revealed a shocking truth. The humans are not working alone. They have allies, many of them including members of this council. Voss stared in disbelief, her translucent skin darkening with stress. "Impossible." "The security implications are precisely why it succeeded," Threll interrupted. "For decades, marginalized species have suffered under the Council's tiered system. The humans simply organized what was already brewing. A hidden projection appeared between them, generated from a device Threll produced from within his crystalline exoskeleton. It showed dozens of species representatives secretly meeting with human diplomats over the past decade. "I show you this because the Council leaders are preparing a desperate measure," Threll continued, the patterns on his skin dimming to indicate gravity. "They plan to activate the Severance Protocol, cutting off all hyperspace corridors to Earth and its colonies, effectively stranding humanity in isolated space." Voss's neural pathways flashed with alarm, pulses of bright yellow light racing through the visible networks under her skin. "That would condemn billions to slow starvation as resource shipments ceased." "Precisely. And it would trigger the humans' deadliest contingencies." Threll produced a data crystal. "This contains proof that 42 Council species are actively supporting the human initiative. Not out of coercion, but conviction." He placed the crystal on the table between them. "The Modar have maintained our neutrality for 9 centuries, Director. But this action would violate the foundational principles of the Council itself. My people cannot remain silent." Across the station, in a chamber even more secure than Director Voss's, the Council's emergency authority convened in what they believed was absolute secrecy. The chamber was accessible only through a series of matter transport gates, each requiring genetic verification from the 7 founding species. Presider Volmar and the representatives of the 7 founding species prepared to authorize the severance protocol. The ancient document, an actual physical artifact written on materials that could survive stellar collapse, lay on the center table. Its technology predating most council member civilizations. "We have no choice," intoned Representative Marix of the Vossian hegemony, his amphibian features set in grim determination. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities that threaten the stability of the entire council system." "Agreed," added the Zarelian prime speaker, mandibles clicking in agitation. Their disruptive influence spreads. 14 member worlds have already announced support for their demands. Presider Volmar's containment vessel hovered closer to the ancient document. "Then we are decided. Activation requires the biosignature of all founding members. As they move to place their various appendages on the designated sections of the artifact, the chamber doors locked without warning. A faint hum indicated that the matter transport gates had been disabled. The view screens activated to show not Ambassador Reeves, but Admiral Jorux, the Council's own military leader. "The protocol will not be implemented," he stated firmly, his scales now bearing new markings, symbols matching those worn by human military officers. "Jorux, you dare betray the Council?" Volmar's containment vessel pulsed with outrage, flaring bright crimson and orange. "I choose to prevent atrocity," Jorux responded, his voice steady. "I have seen the evidence the humans provided. For centuries, my people's colonial worlds have been designated resource extraction zones while core worlds prospered. The humans offered us partnership, not subjugation." One by one, view screens activated around the chamber, showing military leaders of dozen species, all wearing the same new insignia. The symbol was simple, a circle containing representative marks from various council species arranged as equals. "The combined defense force no longer answers to the Council," Jorux declared. "We stand with humanity and the Reform Coalition. You have 16 hours remaining to accept the terms of reorganization." As the screens went dark, Presider Volmar received a private message from Director Voss. "They've outmaneuvered us at every turn. I recommend compliance." The message contained a video attachment, footage of human medical ships already deploying to worlds long neglected by Council aid, bringing advanced care to species who had been told such technology was beyond their developmental authorization. In a small, unmarked facility orbiting a red dwarf star, Ambassador Eleanor Reeves met with representatives of the Reform Coalition. Unlike the opulent council chambers, this room was simple: functional furniture, plain walls, no displays of power or wealth. 30 beings from 26 species sat as equals around a circular table. "Phase 3 should be unnecessary," Eleanor said, reviewing data on a simple tablet. "Our intelligence suggests the council leadership is fracturing. The severance protocol has been neutralized as a threat." A small furry being with 6 limbs and large eyes spoke up. "What if they refuse to comply even now?" "The founding species have controlled the galaxy for millennia. They may not surrender power willingly." Eleanor nodded to acknowledge the concern. "That's why Phase 3 exists, Representative Tull. But it's designed as our last option." She activated a holographic display showing a complex network of connections between various systems. "This is the actual structure of council governance, the hidden pathways of influence and control that exist beneath the official procedures. We've spent decades mapping it." The display zoomed in on key nodes, financial systems, military command structures, research restriction protocols, and resource allocation networks. Phase 3 would expose these structures publicly, while simultaneously making them inoperable. The Council wouldn't just lose power, they would lose legitimacy in the eyes of every species in the galaxy. A tall, willowy being with bark-like skin rose to speak. The Arboran representative's voice was deep and slow, resonating through the chamber. "This approach avoids bloodshed, which we appreciate. But what comes after? Power vacuums can be dangerous." Eleanor smiled. "That's why we've spent years building the alternative structures. The transition plan includes immediate implementation of the new charter, with emergency provisions for maintaining essential services," she gestured, and the display changed to show a different network, one built around distributed authority, transparent processes, and balanced representation. The Reform Coalition isn't just about removing the old power structure, it's about having a better one ready immediately. A communication alert chimed softly. Eleanor checked her device and looked up with surprise. It seems we have an unexpected development. The Council Emergency Authority is requesting direct negotiations, not through intermediaries, but with me personally. Murmurs spread around the table. It could be a trap, warned the Tellurian representative, her 4 eyes blinking in synchronization. Or it could be surrender, countered another. Eleanor considered for a moment. It's neither. They want to save face to make it appear they're in control of this transition. She smiled slightly. Let them have that illusion if it means avoiding Phase 3. She rose from her seat. I'll meet with them. The outcome remains the same either way. The old council ends today. As she prepared to depart, Admiral Jorix's image appeared on the main communication display. Ambassador, our intelligence units have detected unusual activity at the galactic rim. Long-range sensors show unknown vessels approaching from intergalactic space. Eleanor froze, then exchanged glances with the senior coalition members. How long until they reach council space? At current velocity, approximately 50 standard years, Jorix replied. Keep monitoring. We'll discuss this after the negotiations. Eleanor turned back to the coalition representatives. It seems our timing was more fortunate than we knew. A united galaxy may soon face a greater challenge than internal politics. She straightened her uniform and moved toward the exit. The council wanted war. Instead, they'll get transformation, just in time to face what's coming from beyond. The council's emergency bunker on Rigel 9, a facility whose existence was known to only the highest echelons of government, was supposed to be impenetrable. The entire moon-sized installation was buried beneath 20 kilometers of specially hardened crust, with defenses designed by the most paranoid military minds of 17 species. Yet as the Council's remaining loyal representatives huddled inside the central chamber, the environmental system suddenly shifted, not failing, but changing the atmospheric composition slightly. A subtle shift in oxygen-nitrogen balance, the addition of trace elements that varied by species, all carefully calibrated. Nothing harmful, but enough to induce a mild state of calm among the varied species present. Neurochemical manipulation, explained a human voice as holographic projectors activated, revealing Ambassador Reeves standing among them despite being physically absent. Another technology your scientists dismissed as theoretically impossible. We found it quite useful for creating productive negotiation environments. Presider Volmar's containment vessel shimmered with indignation, energy patterns flashing in chaotic bursts. You drug us against our will and call it negotiation? We've simply adjusted your agitation levels to match those of your average citizen, trying to petition the council. Eleanor replied with a thin smile. Consider it experiential education. The hologram was perfect, indistinguishable from physical presence. It showed Eleanor in simple diplomatic attire, standing with hands clasped behind her back. Nothing flashy or intimidating, just a single human female facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Behind her appeared another figure, Jal Namek, head of the Council's Developmental Oversight Committee, the very agency responsible for restricting technology, sharing with immature species like humans. His crystalline form glittered under the chamber lights, refracting them in patterns indicating extreme stress. I've seen their evidence, Namek said, his voice produced by vibrating specific facets of his crystalline body. For 3 centuries, my committee has been manipulated to enforce artificial technological hierarchies that had nothing to do with species development and everything to do with economic control. Namek projected a series of classified documents from his central facet, a capability of his species normally used for ceremonial displays. These were no ceremonies, but damning records showing systematic suppression of emerging species. The humans didn't hack our systems to discover this. They were approached by whistleblowers from 17 different species, including my own. Morax, the massive Voshian representative, rose to his full height. Traitors! They should be executed for telling the truth? Eleanor interrupted. This reaction, this immediate resort to violence against those who speak out, is precisely why we had to take drastic action. Her hologram moved around the room, passing through the massive table as she approached each representative in turn. Your 24 hours have nearly expired. But I'm here to offer a revelation that may change your perspective. With a gesture, she revealed a stellar map, showing a massive region of space beyond the Council's explored territories, the vast dark region between galaxies that most species never bothered to study, while you've been focused on controlling known space. Humanity has been exploring. We've discovered something the founders of the Council have kept secret for millennia, an extragalactic threat approaching the Milky Way's outer rim. The projection shifted to show massive structures moving between stars, structures clearly artificial yet unlike anything in Council records. They resembled enormous lattices, each the size of a small solar system with energy signatures that dwarfed even the largest Council installations. We call them harvesters. Based on archaeological evidence from dead systems in their path, they strip inhabited worlds of all resources, biological and mineral. They'll reach Council space within 50 years. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Even the most powerful Council members seemed stunned by this revelation. Preposterous, Morax finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. This is clearly human deception. Eleanor's expression remained calm. The Vossian Collective sent 6 deep space exploration vessels beyond the galactic rim 3 centuries ago. All disappeared without explanation. Your own archives contain the reports, classified at the highest levels. Morax's amphibian features froze in shock. That mission was known to only a handful of his species' highest leaders. Your corrupt stratified council would never unite effectively against this threat, Eleanor continued. A divided galaxy obsessed with internal power struggles cannot stand against an external invader. Presider Volmar's vessel approached the hologram. If this is true, why declare war? Why not simply present this evidence? Would you have believed us? Eleanor asked simply. Or would you have dismissed it as human deception to gain technology access? We needed to demonstrate our capabilities first, to prove we are not the primitive species you categorized us as. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each representative. Our war never targeted civilians or even military personnel beyond temporary incapacitation. It targeted only the power structures that keep this galaxy divided and weak. We don't want to destroy the Council. We want to transform it into what it always claimed to be, a true galactic union of equals. The hologram expanded to show hundreds of ships, not weapons platforms, but massive research vessels crewed by mixed species teams. Unlike Council ships with their rigid hierarchies, these vessels showed members of different species working side by side as equals. While your Council debated resource allocations, we built these. The first joint species expedition fleet ready to investigate the harvester threat, crewed by scientists from over 50 worlds, many of them recruited directly from Council research institutions that had buried their discoveries for political reasons. The Zarelian representatives' mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought. How can we verify this threat exists? The coordinates are included in the data package you just received, Eleanor replied. Send your own expedition. But understand this, the Reform Coalition fleet departs in 7 days with or without Council approval. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. The intergalactic void is vast. Meeting this threat will require the combined knowledge of all our civilizations, working as partners rather than as rulers and subjects. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. You have 1 hour to decide. Join us as equals against the real enemy, or cling to power as the galaxy faces extinction. The war I declared was never meant to be won, only to force this moment of decision. As her hologram began to fade, Presider Volmar's vessel moved forward urgently. Wait, we need more time to consider. Time is the one resource we cannot manufacture, Eleanor replied, her image growing translucent. 1 hour. Then Phase 3 begins. After her hologram disappeared completely, the Council members sat in stunned silence. The atmospheric adjustments had been subtle enough that their effects were already fading, leaving the representatives with clear minds to consider what they'd learned. Director Voss, who had been silently observing from a corner of the room, finally spoke. I've verified the data independently. The extragalactic objects appear to be real. Their energy signatures match anomalies we've been detecting for decades but never properly investigated. Representative Crix of the Zarelian Confederation chittered nervously. If the humans fabricated this threat, Then they've committed immense resources to an elaborate deception, Voss interrupted. But my analysis suggests otherwise. The evidence spans too many independent sources. Presider Volmar's vessel hovered in the center of the chamber, its normally vibrant energy patterns subdued. We must consider our options carefully. If we accept their demands, the Council as we know it ceases to exist. And if we refuse? Asked a normally silent representative from a minor species. What exactly is Phase 3? Director Voss activated her own data display. Based on the patterns of Phases 1 and 2, I believe Phase 3 would expose the Council's inner workings to the entire galaxy, while simultaneously rendering our control systems inoperable. Not destruction, but complete transparency. That would cause chaos, Morax warned. Perhaps, Voss conceded. Or perhaps it would simply accelerate a transformation that was already inevitable. The humans have built an alternative structure already. The Reform Coalition isn't just a political movement. It's a functioning government in waiting. The chamber's main display activated, showing a countdown. 57 minutes remaining. Presider Volmar's vessel pulsed slowly as he addressed the room. I have served as presider for 6 centuries. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, but I have never encountered a situation like this, where we face not military defeat but philosophical checkmate. He turned to face each representative in turn. We must vote, not as the council that was, but as individuals who must choose the future path of our galaxy. As the countdown continued, the most powerful beings in the galaxy faced their greatest challenge. Not from weapons or armies, but from an idea they could not defeat: equality. The Great Chamber of Concord, hastily constructed on neutral territory in the Tau Ceti system, hummed with tense energy. 3 weeks after Ambassador Reeves' declaration of war, representatives from all 700 council species gathered, not in their traditional hierarchical arrangement, but in a circular formation where no position held prominence over others. The chamber itself represented a dramatic departure from council architecture. Instead of imposing heights and intimidating scale, it embraced openness and equality. The ceiling was a transparent dome showing the actual stars rather than artificial lighting. The walls featured living plants from hundreds of worlds, growing together in carefully designed harmony. Most striking was the absence of elevated platforms or special seating for founding species. Eleanor Reeves stood at the center, now joined by leaders from dozens of formerly marginalized species. Her simple diplomatic uniform had been modified with a single symbol, the circular emblem of the Reform Coalition, containing representative marks of all member species arranged as equals. Behind them, a massive display showed real-time footage of the Joint Expedition Fleet approaching the first confirmed harvester structure at the galaxy's edge. 87 ships of various designs moved in coordinated formation, their crews representing over 50 different species working together. The Galactic Council is dissolved, announced former Presider Volmar, his containment vessel now bearing the same equality markings. In its place, we established the Galactic Concord, a true union of species bound not by power hierarchies but by shared purpose. The chamber erupted in a mixture of approving sounds from various species. Trills, rumbles flashed bioluminescence patterns, pheromone releases, and dozens of other species-specific expressions of agreement. The cacophony would have seemed chaotic in the old council, where strict protocols governed all interactions. Here it was welcomed as the authentic voice of a diverse galaxy. Admiral Joruk stepped forward, his scales gleaming under the natural starlight. The battle markings on his crest had been supplemented with symbols of unity rather than conquest. The former council military has been reorganized into the Concord Defense Force. All technological restrictions between species are hereby eliminated. Knowledge sharing will be our strength, not a controlled commodity. Director Voss, her neural pathways glowing with new intensity, approached the central communication array. The normally reserved intelligence director showed uncharacteristic emotion, her translucent skin pulsing with bright patterns of anticipation. The expedition fleet has established first contact protocols with the Harvester Vanguard. We're receiving telemetry now. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the massive alien structures came into view, planet-sized assemblages of technology beyond even the most advanced council understanding. The harvesters resembled enormous lattices of dark material, absorbing rather than reflecting light, with occasional pulses of energy flowing through their structures like blood through veins. "This," said Eleanor, her voice calm despite the gravity of the moment, "is why humanity acted as we did. Facing this threat required a unified galaxy, not one fragmented by artificial divisions." A new figure stepped to Eleanor's side, Dr. Marcus Vega, Earth's leading xenobiologist. Unlike the political and military leaders around him, Dr. Vega wore simple laboratory attire, with tools and instruments hanging from multiple pockets. The harvesters appear to be biomechanical in nature, not inherently malevolent but operating on programming established millions of years ago, to gather resources at any cost for creators long extinct. Marcus gestured, and the display shifted to show technology blueprints, complex diagrams combining elements from dozens of different species' scientific traditions. These are communication protocols developed by a joint human-Zerelian Modar research team. "We believe we can establish meaningful contact rather than defaulting to conflict." Ambassador Crix, the once hostile Zerelian representative, extended a limb in the traditional gesture of respect, touching his primary mandible to his central thorax. "The humans never wanted war. They wanted to save us from ourselves before a greater threat arrived. Their declaration was the most rational form of peace." The display updated, showing the expedition fleet's lead vessel deploying specialized communication arrays. Data streams flowed between the human-led coalition ships and the massive harvester structure. Initial analysis suggests the harvesters operate on fundamental principles we never explored, Dr. Vega explained. They perceive reality through quantum probability states rather than fixed observations. Their conception of communication is entirely different from anything in Council records. Eleanor addressed the assembly one final time. "The war I declared was against an idea, the idea that some species deserve dominance over others. That war is won. Now we face a different challenge that requires all our combined knowledge and strength." The chamber's central pedestal rose, bearing a document, the Concord Charter, its first article clearly visible on display screens throughout the room. "All sentient species stand equal in rights, responsibilities, and representation. No technological resource or developmental restrictions shall be imposed based on species age or origin. The strength of one is the strength of all." As representatives approached to add their signatures or genetic markers, the expedition fleet sent its first successful transmission to the harvester entity. The response, translated through the combined linguistics databases of 30 species, appeared on the chamber's display. Purpose query received. Alternative directives acceptable. Adaptation possible. A wave of hope swept through the chamber as the implications became clear. The harvesters weren't mindless destroyers. They were ancient tools that could potentially be redirected. Eleanor turned to Volmar, a faint smile on her face. "It seems they too can be reasoned with when approached correctly, just as the Council could." Volmar's vessel pulsed in what might be interpreted as chagrin. "You never intended conquest." "Never," Eleanor confirmed. "Humanity has had enough of hierarchies and empires. We've learned those lessons through our own bloody history. What we declared war on wasn't your species or even your institution, but on the very concept that power should flow from top to bottom, rather than between equals." Former Representative Morax, the massive Vashan who had been among the most resistant to change, approached Eleanor. His amphibian features were set in a solemn expression. "My species ruled through strength for millennia. We believed this was the natural order." He extended a webbed appendage toward Eleanor. "We were wrong. The true strength lies in unity, not dominance." As the signing continued, the expedition fleet established stable communication with the Harvester Collective. The massive ancient structures began to alter their trajectory, moving away from populated systems based on the coordinates provided by the Concord. The final image displayed to the assembly showed human scientists working alongside former Council specialists, their combined expertise already reconfiguring the ancient directives of the extragalactic visitors. Species that had been bitter rivals under the old system now collaborated seamlessly, each contributing unique perspectives to problems that no single civilization could have solved alone. A Tellurian scientist, working side by side with a human colleague, made a breakthrough in understanding the harvester's quantum-based consciousness. A Zarelian engineer, collaborating with a Vossian materials expert, developed a new communication interface that bridged conventional technology with the Harvester's exotic systems. Eleanor watched these developments with quiet satisfaction. The humans' declaration of war had indeed stunned the Council, not through superior firepower, but through the radical notion that true strength comes from cooperation rather than domination. In the end, humanity's most powerful weapon had been a vision of equality that even their adversaries could embrace when faced with extinction's alternative. As the Concord Charter received its final signature, Eleanor Reeves spoke words that would be recorded in galactic history. Today marks not the end of a war, but the beginning of a genuine peace, one strong enough to face whatever lies beyond our galaxy's edge. Outside the chamber, news of the conquered spread throughout the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, citizens who had lived under Council restrictions for generations celebrated not conquest, but transformation. The war that had stunned the Council had lasted less than a month, caused no casualties, and ended not with surrender but with evolution. As Eleanor left the signing ceremony, Admiral Jorix fell into step beside her. It was a masterful strategy, he admitted, one that no military mind would have conceived. Eleanor smiled. That's precisely why it worked, Admiral. You were all prepared for the wars you understood, ships, weapons, territories. We chose to fight a different battle entirely. And the Harvesters? He asked. Were they convenient timing or part of your plan? Neither, she replied honestly. But they proved what we already believed, that survival requires cooperation, not competition. Some lessons are universal, it seems. Together, they watched as the new Concord representatives dispersed, returning to their worlds not as rulers and subjects, but as equal partners in the greatest alliance the galaxy had ever known. The war that began with a stunning declaration had ended with an even more stunning peace.